Presence, the podcast for everyone interested in bodywork, embodiment, and somatic practices. I'm Andrew Rosenstock, your host and guide on this enlightening journey. With my expertise as a somatic movement therapist, yoga therapist, and certified Rolfer, I'll merge clinical insight with real-world experience to enrich our discussions with our guests. Through engaging and informative talks, this podcast delves into mind-body paradigms, offering insights and strategies to empower personal growth. Your support is vital for our grassroots and lo-fi production. If you connect with our content, please leave a positive review and subscribe on your preferred platform. Your engagement helps us reach a broader audience and supports our mission. So thanks for tuning in today to Touching into Presence. Fasten your seatbelt as we embark on a journey to explore the transformative power of contemplative and somatic practices together. It was a pleasure to be in conversation today with Jussi Pellonpää. Jussi is a certified Rolfer, physiotherapist, massage therapist, and a somatic experiencing practitioner who specializes in looking at how the person's deeply rooted attitudes manifest in all levels of body and mind functioning, and in using that understanding to guide interventions aimed at improving the client's goals with the most precision possible. In today's conversation, we explored how Jussi's path bridges Rolfing, physiotherapy, and somatic experiencing into a deeply embodied, process-oriented approach to healing. We discussed the pacing of structural integration, the difference between neurophysiological and biological adaptation, and how true change often requires time, space, and surrender. Jussi reflected on the interplay between posture, safety and pre-movement, a subtle ground where physiological and psychological patterns converge. Together, we examined the challenges of working with high-performing yet dysregulated clients, the ethics of force and bodywork, and the importance of practitioner clarity. Jussi's work invites us to honor transformation not as something to impose, but as something to meet, slowly, relationally, and with deep respect for the body's timing. This is another one in the Colleagues Corner theme, where colleagues get together and talk about things they're passionate about. I hope you find it enjoyable and supportive. And so with that, let's begin our talk. Hey, Jussi.
Nice to meet you finally.
So you've been doing a few podcasts, but I'm guessing they've been in Finnish, or have they been in
Yes.
English?
Yeah, the local Finnish podcast.
I mean, we have a few things we chatted about before, but is there anything in particular that really is on your mind to chat about?
Well, I think the discussion we began on the Rolfing private forum was something that sparked the whole idea of this discussion. So I'm pretty cool because that whole athletic point of view, or that potential, in the athletic realm, is something that is not discussed too much anyway. So why not go from there?
Yeah. Shortly after that talk is when I more or less removed myself from Facebook, taking a hiatus. And so I don't know what's been going on in the forum since.
I mainly go to Facebook to just see whether somebody has a birthday that I need to send my celebrations to. So that's the main reason.
Can you refresh my memory a little bit about, because I remember one thing that we talked about offline about athleticism, which I think we'll go into, but what was the actual topic of the...
if we may refer to the OP, who, we don't have to say the names or anything. The original posters asked a question about how to support somebody's structural integration process through strength training, if I recall correctly. And there were a lot of good, wonderful responses to the question. And somewhere along that, there we got to know each other and had a nice discussion. But it was something. I remember how I responded, because I don't quite remember what all the other responses were. So it would kind of help me refresh my memory about the whole conversation. But I responded that. Because the funny thing is, I don't remember whether the OP asked if strength training can support structural integration process or vice versa. That's I'm trying to figure out. What was it? Yeah. But anyway, I responded to him or her. I think it was her that it's that we may have to distinguish or keep separate the actual Rolfing process, like the true structural integration process, which is something that may have growing pains along the way. That was my point of view, and then perhaps just focus on one aspect at a time. With some clients, depending on like where they're at. If somebody has a tournament competition coming soon, so then we may have to refrain from doing like a whole true structural integration process, because then it may involve what I call growing pains, when the biological adaptations come only after the neurophysiological adaptations, so like I got, like when I went through my first 10 series, I had some issues. Well, at that point, quite minor issues. I had some discogenic back pain or radiculopathy, like sciatic symptoms, and the sciatic pain and all that, and had my lumbar L4 and 5 on the right hand side. I think you operated once, like back in 2008, and But anyway, I had minor issues, not really issues at all, actually. When I think about it, but anyway, I went through my 10 series the first time around, and I realized that what I gained from like the first, I don't know, 1 or 4 sessions was that uh, ease of uprightness, which at that point, is mostly neurophysiological. That's when the proprioceptive system begins to adjust the tensions responsible for maintaining our upright posture. That's the basic, thing that happens at the initial stages, I think. But then when I went to the gym, I went to do some like front squats, I remember, and I found that even though my upright, like maintaining my uprightness was really easy and effortless, but then under external loads, when the vectors change, because even if you put a minor, well, just like a bar on your back, when you're doing a squat, the vectors change, so, and you have different, moments, affected your body, like you got, uh, what is the word you got? Uh, like different, well, torque is a name, but shear forces and different, directions of vectors of forces affected your body. So then, I realized that when I did, even with a warm-up weight, I did some front squats. There's some back pain and some like something was a bit off. Even though I didn't actually have any issues before, I said it wrong, like first, and then I had minor issues. But when I refreshed my memory, I realized that I didn't actually have any issues. But it's not that the 10 series brought about any issues to me, but it's just that my body was in the process of adapting to a new posture. So then under the external loads, you when you transition, first of all, from one position to another, which is basically, from an upright standing posture to a squat, and even if you have a minor load, it's that the connective tissues have not yet fully reformed, or the constitution hasn't changed yet, because the of course the neurophysiological effect comes first, and the biological adaptations take a lot longer. Like connective tissues don't adapt at the speed of muscles, and the well, the neuromuscular changes, like in the ability to produce force and everything. So that was my response to him or her, that if we're looking for like a true structural integration process, which is like like uh, uh, reorganization of the body from deep within. So then we probably should focus on that if the person has the time and the circumstances. So we should probably focus on that at one time at a time, and then when the biological adaptations that follow the neurophysiological ones have occurred or taken place. So only then, it may be wise to start incorporating that newfound ease of uprightness or movement in gravity into external loads. But if somebody has a competition, like in a 2 weeks, like if somebody comes to see me today and they tell me that they have like a really important athletic, competition or something. So I would probably not, I wouldn't have them go through the whole SI process at that point because there's a risk of these growing pains, hindering their performance at that point. Do you
Well, I
catch
think,
what I'm saying?
yeah. I mean, I think that'll kind of bridge into what I remember of my reply, which got flack from a few people because I was putting the same reply in a few different places.
I remember
That,
that. I was kind of like a judge in between you and the one other person there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's just that because I agree with what you say a bit, but I also slightly don't because I think when you start to bring in aspects of raw movement, including what I was saying is that if you have the tonic function model, which is sort of the basis of raw movement in there, then when you're doing the be it a 10 series or a singular session, the you're saying, okay, here's the neuromuscular changes, and we're also teaching the body the patterns of how to adapt into this new pattern. So there's a bit of training that's happening as well in that's showing how do you here are these changes, and here how do you actually embody that, take it in, and give yourself a way of not just having something done to you, but you actually moving with this newer pattern.
Yeah. Well, I think that we have to decide what is the process actually.
Mm, mm,
Like, and what is the process for the client? That's one of the most important questions, I think. Because if it's for the client. I mean, it may be Rolfing,
mhm,
for us, because we're Rolfers. It is something that we have embodied
mhm.
and kind of
Hopefully,
metabolize ourselves, all the
yeah.
learning, the theory, and everything. So that's what we always do. I mean, from our point of perspective, is Rolfing, but for the client, it could be just something to tune up, for the competition, for example, or rehabilitate an issue, or at least alleviate the symptoms, hindering their performance, which may be like a couple of weeks ahead. So we just because Rolfing process, I believe the true Rolfing process or structural integration process takes time. It's something, with all the tissue constitutional changes in the connective tissues and the passive structures is something that cannot be you can't speed that. I mean, what's the right word? Like speed up the process. Really, it's something you have to wait. You have to use that newly found posture in gravity in order to induce those biological adaptations eventually to take place. So we have to decide, like, is that the right time, for the person to go through that, or should we really listen to the client? Of course, we got to listen to the client always, but to have them to support them, you're like not go through, like I mean, it's just to consider that if we go the true structural integration route, so it's a different process from what the client may have in mind. So
Mhm.
we use the principles, but not, like just something to change the tonus, like, well, the tonus between different muscles and myofascial components, whatever, but help them get out of pain and of course work on the movement patterns, which is you know neuromuscular, neurophysiological and neuromuscular, all that, but we have to just decide what is the process in itself. Like, is it our process something we have in mind, or should we pay closer attention to what the client is saying, and what is their goal, like what is their need at that time, like, because true Rolfing process, which takes several, from 10 weeks to several months, is not aligned with the goals of an athlete wanting to perform in a couple of weeks. But if the client has half a year, for example, until the major competition is coming ahead, so it's a different story then, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree, but I also slightly disagree, because the way that I understand, and even I know some people might get mad and say, "What's true Rolfing?" Because we had a joke when we were doing the training.
Traditional Rolfing is probably the better word.
Yeah, maybe say traditional, because we had a joke when we were doing training that there's as many ways to Rolf as there are Rolfers, and so therefore there's as many truths as there are Rolfers. But I still think the way that I didn't study it this way, but I later came to learn it, that some people will say the whole point of the 10 series was to learn how not to do a 10 series, was to learn how to have every session be a microcosm, so that whenever you're seeing someone, you can keep that framework of the 10 series, but work on them as an individual unit, both as an individual unit and or as a subset of a whole. And so when you say, like, if a client's coming in, they need more time, I think, yeah, depending on what you're doing, but like you said, what's the process? And the process really depends on the person as first the person where they are, and then the person in terms of what are their goals and what's the timeline or the time range, and what can we do in that range. But the thing again for me is, if we're working on the Rolf movement side of it, which I don't love the name Rolf movement, because movement is so
I don't distinguish between the two. It's all the same for me, basically.
Well, it is, yeah. That's because you learned it that way, and I would agree with you on that. But I think the difference really is, at least for me, I think the difference right now is what you call traditional wouldn't have.
One thing I got to be clear about, that I'm not talking about the 10 series at all. 10 series is just one way of doing it. That's traditional Rolfing, in some sense. But I'm just with true Rolfing, or as I meant that, something that adheres to the principles of structural integration, which is not, I don't do the 10 series at all. I haven't done, it's never been something that, I would have done to every client. It's just the ones that have the time and the money available, and those motivated for it, and those whose needs, it is aligned with. But it's, like a true Rolfing process is just something where we gradual, to me, of course, I'm not saying what is the true and what is not, but for me, it is, what I meant by is a process where we work gradually in a process-oriented way, in order to help the person find their support, in order to let go of holding, so they can surrender to the gravity. So, but it can be anything, like 10 series is one way of doing it, but is it quite what is the word, well, I forgot the word anyway.
Well, it's okay. It's not your native tongue, so you're doing great. You're doing much better than I would be doing, speaking to you in Finnish. So I give you respect. I guess my question with that then is, and then maybe I was misunderstanding it.
Generic. That's the word.
Generic. Yeah, I'm seeing this maybe as a different than I was understanding it, and so I'm kind of reframing around you. But I'm thinking, because you're saying, like, even if, like, let's say an athlete comes to you and they say, I having this issue, and I have a competition in 2 weeks. You're saying that it'll take longer than 2 weeks for them to adapt to the whatever changes you do?
Well, perhaps I need to clarify a little bit about what I mean about coming back to the true Rolfing, or whatever. traditional Rolfing. True Rolfing goals. Because we can have an immediate change in the way that the person holds him or herself up in gravity and upright posture. We can immediate change on that, and we can immediate positive change and something that may alleviate their pains and allow them to move more efficiently and perform better. It can be the thing that we may have to do. What is, well, to me and you, is probably Rolfing and adheres to the Rolfing principles. But when we're talking about the whole bigger, longer Rolfing process, I think that's something that I believe involves growing pace. I mean, it may not involve, but it probably does. I mean, it can have involved growing pace, which means that, just like I explained, that, there's a deeper shift taking place. Deeper shift, when we talk about something like the pre-movement, or to be more, I think a more relevant way would be to talk about the movement before movement, because pre-movement can have several different meanings. I think that is the meeting point, the culmination of different biological and psychological processes. So it's not that, as Rolfers, we may not work so closely with the emotional aspects like a psychotherapist may do, but it's something that is always considered or addressed somehow in the work. So the true deeper shift, is something where I think that which involves that surrendering, and the ability, so gradually teaching our clients to, or encouraging our clients to first surrender. And it's not only surrender to the gravity, but but I think it's I forgot the word anyway, but it's a simultaneous process with letting go of resistance to something which cannot be quantified or measured in a sense or physically. So then I think that's something that like the true shift. I forget about the word true, because it can be true to another, it may not be true to somebody else. But anyway, that traditional Rolfing process, at least from how I look at it, is something that we need to kind of devote sometimes, at least with some people, we may have to devote space and time for it to happen, so without, of course, encouraging people to go about their everyday, business, but perhaps not to incorporate anything that would take that space from that deep shift, where the psychological and the biological meet at the meeting point, which is called pre-movement. That's, for me, that's comes down to that a lot. But that's not the depth, the level where we have to work with somebody wanting to tune up, to perform better in a competition, or to get alleviated pain, or actually rehabilitate some condition that they may have hindering their pain-free life or performance, in an athletic sense. I do think that there's a difference. I mean, it's a difference of depth, which you go you go with that shift. It's because you're not going to have that profound shift in the way, in the person's attitude towards the world in a couple of weeks. It takes more. There needs to be that time for integration between the sessions, and the ways that we can support that. So it's a different game than somebody coming to with a less available time for the desired changes, in order to perform better in an athletic event, for example.
Yeah, I think this is the theme for today. I agree with you, and I slightly disagree with you because I had a new client come in this week actually, who was referred to me by another client and their other client I've been seeing for over a year, and it's just there's a lot to work with. There are numerous different levels, and it's like bit by bit by bit. But this person that came in their first time was we I would say we're able to have them move much further, both physiologically, but also what you're saying, like it would take longer for that sort of world orientation. Actually, her world orientation shifted pretty easy. We were much more able to do that. And even though it was our first time together, it was somewhat predicated on, let's say, the work that she had been doing in her life in general prior to coming into me that wasn't about Rolfing at all. I hadn't been doing any body work, but there was a different sense of a world perspective and an ability to also shift their world perspective. And so I agree with a lot of what you say, but I also think I don't know. I've had people who come in for a session and just get it, and things.
Exactly. So too.
Yeah, yeah. So that's just why when you say like it, the way I was hearing it is like it needs more time. It's like it can need more time, but I don't think that it always does. And I truly think when people uh, feel the ground for the first time in a while, or feel how they haven't felt the ground, and they have more relation of themselves in their body and the body with gravity, aka the world. Um, that it's I don't know it's not based on a it'll take this much time. It's as you were saying, it's a process. So a lot is based on well, what has actually taken them away from themselves.
Yeah. I may look at it, this way as well. I mean, did you have something that it wanted to finish with, or?
I did, but my dog came in the room and threw my attention off a little
Oh,
bit.
okay. I saw some, further thing moving. Anyway,
Yeah.
we have to also. I mean, we don't have to do anything, but it may be
Mhm.
useful for us to consider that, or require that, inquire, or just consider that what is what is the way that the person that we have ahead of us, a client, in other words, like what is the way that they maintain their sense of safety,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
posture pattern, postural pattern, which they present with, is a part of
Mhm.
that way of, I mean, it may be a part of the way that they maintain their way of safety, depending
Mhm.
on how they maintain their posture. Like if there's it's when it's not supported by the gravity, but instead held
Mhm.
posture, so it probably, well, a lot of times, well, even if not always, it involves a lot more of the tensions that they have, which may cause them pain, may also be the tensions that they need in order to feel safe.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like I said, that pre-movement, event is a culmination of the psychological and biological. So then we have to appreciate the fact that we cannot take that holding away until that support is found. I mean, this pretty
Mhm.
basic role thing, actually. Consider the tensors, for example. So we have to see where like what is the pattern of maintaining their sense of safety and peace of mind as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'd argue. So we gotta, we have to sense into that pattern. So depending on that, we could do, like you said, you had a client who just get it, but and these clients, they probably have that resource, like that deep sense of safety, better established than somebody else, even if it's
Mhm.
not apparent, like
Mhm.
some other people. But we gotta sense, because there's, like, you can do a minor thing, like something that we may consider even like a mechanical Rolfing intervention sometimes, and we can let go of some holding, even if it looks great in our objective, measure, or objective, sight, but it can be something that, like in the early days of Rolfing, I found that, even if I did something like, wow, this guy's scoliosis may be unwinding, and everything, and then, there may be something like a, uh, like a surge of, emotional material that they're not ready to contain or don't have the capacity to contain yet. So, so we have to consider these facts, and that kind of determines or dictates, at least in one part, like how fast or like can we what we can do with each client, that
Yeah.
encounter them,
Yeah. Well, for a change of pace, I agree with you. One thing that maybe we should also say is you are, if I understand correctly, were you first a physiotherapist, then a
no,
rolfer?
I was a massage therapist first, and
Yeah.
my physiotherapy process began before my Rolfing. My process of becoming a Rolfer. But I became a Rolfer first, and I even became an SC practitioner, Somatic Experiencing Practitioner, before becoming a physio, because my physio process had that love-hate aspect to it, So it took me, long after actually I had become a Rolfer to become a physio. So, but I always, had that physio. Not mentality, but that I was familiar with that stuff, through my early training anyway. So,
So you started with the physio, but then
well,
before you've,
I wouldn't even say that. I started. I was involved. I was interested in Rolfing. I had read Rolfing related material before entering the physiotherapy school. So I was by heart. I was a Rolfer before. Always. Because physiotherapy can be so many things. It's not the traditional physiotherapy is something that you either do in a hospital setting where you rehabilitate, help somebody rehabilitate, after surgical operation, or something that Vladimir Yanta, the old Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia, laid the foundation for, so which is a therapeutic exercise, so that's the traditional, but physiotherapy is just, working towards a physiotherapeutic goal using scientifically based methods to accomplish that, which is not really what happens. But so I was, physiotherapy, is more, mostly just, a degree, of course. Of course, I'm not just saying it's only a degree, but it's like a general comprehension, in order to know how the healthcare system works from the point of view of rehabilitation. So
well,
I'm a
it
role
also
for person. Yeah.
it gives a nice maybe there's less hurdles to jump through. It gives you a leg up having that degree, having that title. And it means more to many people, and so it can open more doors, and you can do them together.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
but what was it that got you to go from Rolfing to SE? Because there's a lot of Rolfers who do this, but
Yeah.
um,
And
you know,
do I recall correctly that you're also doing your SC training, no?
no,
Oh,
no,
okay. It was
no,
else.
I studied a little bit of it. It speaks to me in some ways, but what I found is I think Peter Levine's amazing. I think he's amazing, and I love listening to him speak, just to hear how embodied he is. He's wonderful. But many of the SE practitioners I meet, I don't think they really understand SE. I think they understand the conceptualization, but that's not the thing. And so a part of me wanted to do it at some point, but I think I more or less kind of figured it out. And so,
Well, I mean, or are you still continuing?
yeah, no, you can go on.
Yeah, well, in my basic training, I mean, I haven't done the advanced training anyway, but my basic training, there some of the teachers or the assistant teachers were in the process of becoming an SC practitioners, and we had a lot of, you know, you know, I mean, they use a lot of, examples, from the SC realm. So and it became, once after a couple of years of doing just Rolfing and having a lot of trauma clients, coming to see me, because of that bodily aspect of the trauma, well, in the connective tissue, which is kind of like, you know, something we can get into later. But when I had some challenging clients, I realized that, I started to remember all this theory about the SC that, well, at least one teacher, who was in the process of becoming an SC practitioner and organizing the training, actually the one who organized the training that I attended, and in Spain, and then I just realized that it's like they're all the same spectrum, but just like different entry points into the same thing, like depending on the need, So, and one thing, which is I think is good to mention is that, like, when people ask me, like, oh, what did you get from the SC training? Well, first thing that comes to mind, I became a better Rolfer.
Mm-hmm.
Do SC, I do pure SC. I mean, like SC trauma therapy sessions with like about half of the clients. Some of the half of the clients don't even know what Rolfing is. They come to me for SC, but it's a standalone method, but also something like the Rolfing process itself. That when you metabolize that theory and everything, like on every cell level, so you become better. You gain that, like, a clarity into anything you do, like with regards to Rolfing, physiotherapy, or so so that kind of got me into SC, but also it opened up to another world, like another source of clients coming to see me for like the SC related problems, trauma, so it kind of opened. It was not only to become a better Rolfer, but it also expanded my whole my opportunities and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I had done other slightly different but similar processes. And then just by reading a lot of SC books, I mean, I'm sure there's things I don't know. I don't want to sound rude when I say I kind of got it, but for
Yeah,
me,
I think you have to go through the training, because it is like, I had read a lot of Peter Louise books, before, and I was, if I dare to say, pretty good with the theory, but it does give you a lot that you don't even come to think of before you actually go through the training. I'm not saying that you should go through and probably do
yeah.
it without it, but it's something, I thought the same way that you think now.
But
But,
were you doing that kind of work before you went through the training?
yeah, what?
Were you doing similar to SE before you went to the training?
No, no, not really. I only, of course, like, I applied some of the principles, as the best I could, with Rolfing clients. Not that I was attempting to do SC sessions or anything, but like try to integrate or incorporate my understanding of that side. But I didn't do anything formally. Didn't do anything resembling SC before becoming an SC practitioner or going through the training.
Yeah, by doing that and by reading other work similar, like focusing work and Gestalt work and Hakomi work, for me that there's all a similar, a different way, but a similar place of looking to, which is, I think, very similar to Rolf movement, that it is this different methods of touching into beingness.
Yeah, yeah, and and I think well, I don't know what is the most valuable aspect of SC training, but one of the most valuable aspects was the process of going through it, the whole 3 years of integrating the theory through practice, practicing sessions, during the training, and with my own clients, and I mean, mostly what do you like? It's what the transformation that you go through yourself, that SC
Mhm.
process, and it's a different process that we as practitioners go through compared to our clients, because we have
Mhm.
to integrate all the theory as well into that embodiment process. So it's a different process, and so the transformation that we go through as practitioners is one of the most valuable aspects of the
Oh, for sure.
training.
Yeah. I've got into like some slight disagreements with people on this theory, but I would say that there's a saying that you can't take people further than you've gone. And I agree with that for the most part. And so I think if we haven't got into that depth, as you were saying earlier, we're not able to take people there, to help people go past their own sort of stuff. And so it is definitely required to have that process yourself to integrate. But also, I think when it's just sort of the same thing, but a different way of saying it. When the more clear that we are, the more we clean our junk, the more that the more resonant we are, and the more spacious we are. So the more that we can reflect back and support our clients, because our own dirt, our own junk just gets in the way, but we don't see it.
Yeah. It is. It's kind of like a torch that we're able to carry for our clients. It's kind of like it's not the case of having to go through the same stuff that your clients have gone through and becoming healed. With
All
that.
right. It's impossible. There's no way you could go through that. We don't have the same life. You couldn't go through what your clients have been through.
Yeah. But anyway, it's like then we kind of so we get familiar with that path of
Hmm.
transformation, before, so we can kind of lead the way, like hold the torch, for the clients. So we kind of like we know the twists and turns along the way, so we kind of so that's one way to describe the benefit that we as embodied practitioners having that deep transformational process, having gone through that how we can help our clients. So it's kind of like a third eye or sixth sense or whatever you want to whatever analogy would fit best, but it's it's the ability to have that to to allow what happens in the client's body or the person itself to kind of to resonate in you. So when you have that kind of echo chamber or whatever you could
Hmm.
call it, so then you just it brings about clarity to the moment when you have the client in front of you. So you just through that embodied experience, you understand what you see better, so you know when to put your hands on you, or know when to not touch the person, or do some other intervention or whatever. So it gives, that transformational process is really really I think one of the most valuable things. But I agree that some of the practitioners, when you look at the SC demonstrations on YouTube or whatever, they tend to do a lot of that what was taught actually in the training, which is
Hmm.
just basically, I mean, it's something that works to an extent, but it's just a frame, for learning to becoming a practitioner. But I personally, I think, for me, SC is mostly about that transformational process. But I do take a lot of my influence with regards to my trauma clients comes from like NARM,
Yeah. NURM's great. Yeah.
neuroaffective relational model by the
Yeah.
Lawrence Heller,
Yeah.
and I think that that's one even though I'm not a NARM practitioner, I've got to be clear about that. But it's I've
Hmm.
read his material, for many years. I've read the book like 3 times from cover to cover, and
Hmm.
it's and other modalities and concepts as well. So it's SC for me is mostly about something I carry in myself as a practitioner, and it's something that is reflected, of course, in everything I do. But on a theory level, I incorporate a lot of other stuff too.
Hmm. NURM's really interesting. And this, I think, will tie into the theme that we wanted to talk about that we haven't got into yet. But I
Uh-huh.
really like NARM. I like what I've read. But interestingly, when I've heard Lawrence Heller speak, bodily speaking, he seems very stuck.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
And so for me, it's interesting because you have this. like this great theory that I think points to really good embodiment, and yet is it an embodied, is it being used as an embodied practice, or is it a conceptualization of embodiment? I haven't met him. I'm not meaning to really speak so ill. It's more to sort of bring that to tie into going back to sports. What we were talking about offline was this sort of sense of, and it's been a while, so correct me if I kind of miss it up, but so we're sort of looking at the high intensity dysregulation in high performance sports, but I think you could take it stronger into not just in sports, but also in various figureheads, and sort of looking at that this intensity, this inner intensity that pushes to a drive, which allows people to, I might say the word succeed, or hit high benchmarks, and that works for a while, but it ends up seemingly at some point deteriorating, and it seems to not be so noticed or recognized. But from my standpoint, it shows up, especially if we're using, if we're working with someone from a Rolfing standpoint, that shows up in the tissues. It shows up in their response to gravity, both standing and lying. It shows up in their breath. It shows up as the embodied response.
Yeah, I agree.
And I'm very curious. I'm curious about that, but I'm also curious about how to, curious, and I say about that, I mean, like, how does that come to be? What are the forces that, and I know that everyone's different, but I think to get a generality of, like, what are the forces that do that? And it's not necessarily a bad thing. My curiosity is, can someone have that, but at a slightly toned down level, which keeps them from being as dysregulated, yet still pushing forward in a more balanced way?
Yes, it's kind of like what you're referring to, if I understood you correctly, is like a paradox where they have become kind of not addicted but dependent on that high intensity dysregulated state, or what it was,
Mm-hmm.
term that you used.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it is, that's it is quite tricky, So, and my first thought would be that I would not do it right before the competition. I'm all again coming back to this, So,
Yes.
but just to give allow time, for that. Well, let's just call it unwinding, of that whole
Mm-hmm.
pattern to take place. But I would probably, I mean, if we had somebody who was going to have an important athletic event, in like a couple of weeks or something. So I would probably just guide them or help them identify the pattern first,
Mm.
so that they could simultaneously use whatever research that they have and they may be dependent on for the time being, but also slowly or gradually build that safety net, like
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote safety net, in order to let go of that pattern. It's quite broad way to put it, to let go of pattern, because you cannot let go of a pattern, but let go of any resistance, involved in that pattern, because there is resistance, there's something, that they tense themselves up with, because they don't want that somatic bottom up information to reach their consciousness, because that would be too overwhelming, for some people.
Mm-hmm.
So just the identification of a pattern, first, so that they can begin to build or acquire the resources necessary for eventually letting go of that holding, if we're talking about on a structural bodily level, I think. And it's quite the same principle. Well, I don't know. I just comes to mind like the to compare with like developmental trauma. Where developmental. Are you familiar with developmental trauma?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that happens, when the child is in the age where the brain develops. So so there are a lot of neural circuits that are being formed,
Mm-hmm.
based on how the person or the child adapts, to that environment, that's undesired environment, of course. So that's like when somebody suffers from a severe form of developmental trauma, we cannot really. Like we cannot do basic SC, for example. I mean, if I'm not going too far with my,
That's fine.
yeah, we cannot do basic. Well, basic SC would be something that we do for PSD, like a shock trauma, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there are ways to apply it even in the basic training where the developmental trauma is covered, But it's that because the person is not ready to. Have to receive that discharge of
Mm-hmm.
of the residual energy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we're talking about trauma energy, in this instance, so the kind of like so we have to use that bottom up, not the top down processing strategy first. So because if the person cannot surrender to the gravity, for example, the Rolfing says, or surrender to the state that comes when you let go of resistance
Mm-hmm.
or resisting, something that we kind of want to dissociate ourselves from. So the same principle in the sense that we have to use the top-down processing first.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to use that already established pattern, but just become aware of that. Help the person understand the way that they, the way understand the pattern. For
Or maybe not understand it, but introduce it as a possibility, so that,
yeah,
yeah,
that's where, yeah, a good way to put it. Yeah.
I mean, that's, and I'm fully on board with you. And I'm thinking of a client I had 2 weeks ago who more or less did that, and um, the issue for me was they had, we'll call it Rolfing before, but they had been, had someone who didn't have any of the neurological work and just, beat them up for a while and told them how good it was for them to be beat up. And they're coming back to get that, but that person's, they wanted someone different, and that person's client, their schedule was full. And, my first thought of looking at them was, there's no way I can get into your body because you're stuck in like clear anxiety loops. Your body was so present with.
There's no way to. I didn't hear the word.
There was no way I could really, get into their motor system and really even their
Yeah.
fascia system. I mean, I could push, but I'm not getting in. I'm just meeting resistance because the inner realm is in such a state. And so trying to get this person to understand both, the stronger I push and the more you resist, the less that actually happens. Besides flooding, various mechanoreceptors and neuroreceptors, which gives a mental story of change, but doesn't actually have change. And even I said, I just asked them, what do you have are you working with someone for anxiety? And she said, oh, I did that. I worked with someone years ago, but I'm over it. And I remember just thinking, okay, maybe, but I didn't say this to her, but my experience of how when people have anxiety, they sit and stand just like you. And so trying to kind of weave that in, but there wasn't a doorway open for it because the belief had actually superseded the actuality.
Yeah.
And I just was like, there was nothing. It's like there was nothing I could do because I could give them what they're asking for, but it would seem harmful for me, which seems, just starting pushing her tissue when she's fighting it doesn't actually seem very helpful for me. And it doesn't seem ethical for me to do that, even if somebody is saying this is what I want. It seems very unethical. So it was a similar sort of place of I don't know the whole story yet, but I would presume it was a high functioning business type person. And it's curious to me to say, well, what I don't think it was the high functioning stress of work that had them that. I think it was a prior disposition, but we'll see constantly the same sort of patterns of people with those prior dispositions that dysregulate them end up generally going into dysregulated places, be it sports or business, because it's feeding this sort of loop of sorts. But I'm definitely not saying that all business people nor all athletes have it, because I've worked with professionals who don't.
Yeah,
But I think they are more rare than those who do.
yeah, and there's a good example, good example when you compare different like strength athletes from different schools of like
Mm-hmm.
methodology. You
Mm-hmm.
got, for example, you got Western powerlifters. There are guys who train with moderately low volumes of work, but they go to high intensities like during every week in their training, and they have all that. Uh, Gotta remember the words. Even in Finnish, I remember it. Just give me a moment. They got all the adrenaline. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's surging, and they're hyped up, for that one lift. So it's kind of like they get all hyped up. They go into the bar, and then they do the one deadlift or whatever, and then they spend the rest of the week in a ventilator or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not even figuratively speaking. Some actually do. They
Mm-hmm.
go to the hospital to sleep, with this sleep apnea
Mm-hmm.
mask on and everything, anyway. And then he got the other end. Well, not the other end, but a different mythology and a different personality type. Which kind of gravitate uh, towards that methodology, and a different personality type that gravitates towards these different sports. For example, we got Olympic weightlifting, which is of different nature. It's like does not have the loaded eccentric part. Like you got bench press, you load but
Mm-hmm.
under control. And when you Olympic weightlifting, you just drop the bar. So you have the loaded eccentric, which is decreases the stress that comes, from that. Well, because eccentric, because they don't have it really.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you got the Bulgarian method, which is known for actually going to a max one repetition of each training session. And they repeat these training sessions 3 times daily and 7 days per week.
Mm-hmm.
And they, of course, that's an extreme example, and a lot of Westerners or people from anywhere outside of Bulgaria, used to come to these camps, to train with them, and they couldn't sustain that training, so they got injured or something, so they couldn't continue. But anyway, the Bulgarian training is one where these guys, they don't become like I don't know what's the right word, like hyper, like they uh they don't hype themselves up, for this one repetition, and they're not afraid of, that before that lift, so it's just like they got ashtrays. I mean, they used to have ashtrays right beside the squat racks. They had vodka bottles in it, of course, so could reduce their anxiety through, some external means. But anyway, even like in the Western world, where the those who adhere to that kind of mythology, they tend to be uh, like less, I mean, they tend to, not, induce that anxiety through, like performance, like performing a lifted training session or competition. So they like it's really laid back, in a way. So I'm not even sure why I started talking about. There's something you said, something cool, in which I thought that I would insert this, little. But anyway, like two types of athletes, like different personality types, which are drawn to different mythologies, and probably also that create or develop that kind of state where they're always hyper aroused, or in this high intensity state of dysregulation, and become dependent on that, and are afraid to let go of that, because they're afraid that their performance will suffer, or something, so that's probably the reason I brought up this example.
Yeah, and it makes me think it's like nature and nurture both being a yin yang. That the two are that the nature affects the nurture, and the nurture affects the nature, and they have this symbiotic relationship going on constantly. And it is one of the ways that I see someone who would blend a bit of, be it Rolfing and SE or various mind body ways that are looking at the thing I really like about Rolf movement, that I think SE is very similar, but SE doesn't have that, is what you're talking about as the pre-movement. And I think in SE, and I don't know if they have it, they call it this, but I think what you're really doing is learning to feel or sense or be aware of the response the client is. How is their body, their voice, their tone, their breath shifting just before they give you their answer, right? And so that is so informative of how is that person in their state of being. There are different qualia to it that, while not 100% saying this means that, are usually informative, that can start to show it. And I think that if we were able to work more with parts of the nervous system and parts of the dysregulation, the tissue can sometimes even change itself, but becomes so much less important to actually plow away, because what is much of that tissue bracing from, right? And then when I did my basic Rolfing training, we were taught that, I don't know if you were taught this, of lesions and inhibitions, this theory of we're working with either lesions or inhibitions. Lesions are physical, like pure physical, and inhibitions are something not necessarily pure physical.
Or
And
not geometrically traceable anyway.
Yeah. And so, if somebody's had an accident, you're you can't just tell someone to think differently and all of a sudden scar tissue goes away. But for things that are more not just that lesion, having them start to have a different movement pattern, or different way, or even just noticing, do you realize, so much of my work is about having people realize, did you just notice what you did? Did you notice how you breathed that way? Did you notice how you said that? Did you notice how you moved? And as they do that, it changes their possibilities. And as they become more aware, they shift their patterning, and a lot of the bracing that's happening either just the pre-movement or just right after can shift. And as that falls away, there's just just an ease of movement, or maybe not ease, but more ease. So I might not be fully easeful, but there's a little bit more ease in here. And I believe it's not just about the movement, but it's tied into the dysregulation underneath. And just one thing to kind of be a bit of the counter to that, and just pushing the tissue, just being strong, just controlling people, as some body workers and SI and Rolfers can do, can actually be more dysregulating. But that'll be confusing. Like for this one client I mentioned, I believe that what was happening to her was actually more dysregulation under the disguise of being regulated. Oh, I feel better. But actually it was pushing more down and more down.
So you said that it was like dysregulation disguised as regulation, or
yeah. Because if we don't really even understand what regulation is, we're not looking for regulation. We're looking to have less pain, and we're going to equate less pain as no pain, and not have the awareness that actually no pain might be like, and not actually might be like lots of pain that I'm no longer observing or sensing. And so therefore, yes, I have no pain because I don't sense the pain. But the metaphor I'll use is the fire is still there. I just have a box around it. And so I don't actually see it, but everything else keeps burning, but I don't actually see it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's always not always a question, but it's something to consider that, like I think it was Jeffrey Birch, who states, emphasizes that we need to demonstrate the improvement to the client, like
Mm-hmm.
after mention, like what is probably tested before and allow the client to become aware that, okay, my shoulder flexion is only about like 75 degrees, and then after the intervention, if there's an improvement to demonstrate that improvement, like see how far it goes, because it's it's a question of whether like you can do a treatment or a session that gives some kind of fulfillment, and there's something new that they sense or become aware of, something that they have been given. But then, it can be on a silent level. It can be just the absence of, like, for example, pain, if it was not excruciating pain, or, just some minor nagging, which has been bothering, and they may be, like unappreciative, like, oh, I didn't feel anything happy. And you're like, but do you feel your pain? Oh, yeah, I don't have the pain anymore. So you got to show them, that, like that, not sure how to put it, but you have to demonstrate that progress, somehow. And it may also, you don't have to do anything, but it may be good to demonstrate that progress, after an intervention, for example, so that they can become,
Well,
powered or whatever, and then start to, and then, that fulfillment may come, after that. Okay, now that I don't have it, actually, I've realized that I don't have the pain anymore. And so then something, like they start realizing, oh, now my breath is changing, and I'm standing with much more ease and all that. So that whole holistic change make it, they become aware of through that. Yeah.
right. And I don't love this phrase, but I don't have a better phrase yet, is if they're ready for it. I don't love the phrase ready, because I think we're always ready. But I think about this client who I wasn't able to connect, and I think they were ready for it. Maybe the way that I tried to bring it wasn't the right way. Maybe, but I think we're always sort of ready for it. But at the same point, sometimes it isn't the time, or there's another way in, or something in that and if we're not able to get them on board, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're always on some level ready. Correct.
I think so. I mean, I really think so. But like, one of my clients one time, I was saying how she was doing such a great job, and she really wants. It's clear to me she really wants to get better. And she said, "Well, doesn't everyone that come in want to get better?" And I said, "Not really. Everyone thinks they want to get better, but there's a lot of unknown or unaware stuff, and not everybody is keen for that." Which is not meant to sound critical or negative. There's lots of reasons why, and I'm aware that though there's many reasons why. There's many reasons that we all are kept in the dark by ourselves, and so it's not meant to sound as rude or critical. It's also just we to some extent, I don't know if we can do anything until those habits, patterns, awarenesses start to shift.
Yeah. And, it's, I don't know, kind of to, probably relates to what you said, but, how to put it, when somebody comes, to near you or any of us Rolfers or body workers to get, to restore their previous pain-free state, just to put it simply, like get rid of knee pain or hip pain or whatever. and they have this idea that I mean, on some level, they consciously they may be aware of. I mean, they may think that okay, now when I accomplish this, and when I get so my basic healthy pain-free state becomes restored. It's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
you have regressed from that basic state, and then we bring them back, or health
Mm-hmm.
back to the state. So they think that okay, it's only enough in life to be. I mean, for a short moment, they may think that it's only enough that that would be that I'm pain free. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm pain free. No, that's not true. There's always something like, even our bodies, attempt or to become to reach this balanced harmonious state, and on
Mm-hmm.
level the person deep within well, may not realize in the moment that they think that okay, I will be happy and fulfilled when I'm back to my normal state.
Mm-hmm.
But that alone, that pain-free life is not enough. We need a lot more. We need some fulfillment, like some enjoyment and all that. So that's why I think the holistic approach, where we consider all these aspects, even if our main objective is to rehabilitate a knee, somebody from knee pain, for example, even if that's the main objective, but doing it with on one hand the principles of structural integration,
Mm-hmm.
and and also considering the some principles from other methods like somatic experiencing, for example, and anything that we may be qualified in. So
Mm-hmm.
we actually would probably, I believe that we enhance the process of rehabilitating that knee when we consider all these aspects, because that's where the body wants to go eventually.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a person will not be, when he reaches that, if he's otherwise unhappy in his life, in his or her life, when he accomplishes that pain-free state, for the knee, for example. So then he or she may realize that okay, it's that he's not appreciative of that, that pain-free, because if he or she is lacking something else, so when we all kind of factor in that holistic reality, so I think that the better we get enhanced better outcome, from our intervention.
Mm. Yeah. Well, for me, I think what we have found in offline is we can talk for a while, and I think we're in similar places. But I enjoy talking with you because there is similar is not the same. So similar will have some edges that will shift, and I enjoy having my edges shifted because I'd like to always improve if I can, and I don't improve by staying the same. So I appreciate our communications, and I was going to say that I would talk more, but we're already at a bunch of time, so people listening maybe already like, ooh. But the other is, it's been a long day, and I'm feeling not my adrenals, but other parts of my body say it might be time for a nap, and so I think we'll probably call it around here. I've enjoyed this. I like having these what I call colleagues corners because I think it's really interesting to talk about the work, and a lot of us don't have people we get to talk too much about it. So if we don't, my hope is that those people who don't get to listen to other people, and it's almost the same.
Yep.
Yeah. Is there anything that you want to share before we wrap for today, or do you feel this is a good place for closure?
Yeah, I don't think not anything that comes to mind at the moment. I think
Yeah,
we covered.
we covered a lot and more. And yes, there's
Yeah,
always more to talk about. But
sure.
yeah, I have a nap. My dog wants my attention. So yeah, you see, it's I'm saying it correct too, right? You see?
Yeah. You're saying it pretty well actually, because that whole transition between the J and the U is pretty unique to Finnish. Like even
Mm,
other Nordic Scandinavian countries, I mean, the people of other Scandinavian countries have a hard time spelling Jussi, because it's not, it's that JU with that smooth transition. Jussi.
You'll
It's
see.
hard. Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
better
You're
to have
okay.
American
I don't know.
buddy I've come across. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you'll see. Thanks for the time, and I look forward to more conversations to come. Yeah.
Me too. Yeah, looking forward to our future conversations.
Cheers.
Yeah. Right.
Bye.
Night.
Bye. Thanks for listening to us at Touching to Presence. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation. You can find out more about Jussi at rolfing-helsinki.fi. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd appreciate it if you'd leave a positive review of the podcast and subscribe to it through the platform of your choice. When you do this, it really helps other people find us, and we greatly appreciate your support. We look forward to hearing back from you and seeing you on our next conversation at Touching to Presence. Bye for now.